Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Edelstein from the JDC archives. I hope you can hear me and that you can see my screen. Gary Regev at IGRA had a little bit of an audio problem, so we're going to go right in without any introductories. But I want to thank Gary and Daniel as well, and thanks to IGRA for organizing this webinar series and for inviting me to speak with you today about our JDC Archives online resources, and particularly using our databases for family searching. I will begin with some background for those of you who may not be that familiar with JDC's history. We were founded in 1914 at the beginning of World War I, when the food supply chain was blocked by blockade to Palestine, and the Jewish community was facing starvation. The U.S. ambassador to the Ottoman Empire happened to be Henry Morgenthau, who wrote to his friend Jacob Schiff in New York. They were both wealthy German Jews, and he said, please organize support to help the community. And Schiff got right on it, and eventually that group joined with Orthodox Jews and with Communist Jews to form a joint distribution committee to consolidate their aid efforts and help the most people that they possibly could. We expanded then into Poland and elsewhere during the war, and after the war, rather than ceasing operations as had initially been thought, we continued with recovery work and aid to orphans and providing health care and on into vocational training and agricultural projects. The work continued on through the decades. JDC continues to work actively around the world today, providing professional development for community leadership, continuing to provide aid to elderly Holocaust survivors and others in Ukraine, in Russia, and a range of activities in Israel that many of you may be familiar with. We also now provide non-sectarian aid in the face of natural disasters and other global emergencies. The JDC Archives, which has offices in Jerusalem and New York and collections in both places, is the institutional repository of JDC, and as such holds only records of JDC's activities. But because of the history of the 20th century, that means that we have documentation of significant historical events from Europe, from North Africa and the Middle East, and elsewhere that are of direct interest to those in Jewish studies and other fields of research. Our text and photograph collections are the two main and largest collections, but we also have oral histories, other historic audio recordings, films and videos, and artifacts and ephemera. So our text collections are mainly arranged chronologically, and there are two principal sets of collections: that of our New York headquarters, arranged by decades generally, and that work has been done through the 1990s. The 90s collection is currently being completed, or will be when we can get back to our boxes in our warehouse. And the work of our overseas headquarters, which was eventually based in Geneva, and prior to that had been in Paris and elsewhere. Those records are in Jerusalem, and the first two decades, 45 to 64, have been cataloged. There are other collections, as you see here, records from smaller European and Middle Eastern offices and other subject topic collections. Now, many of these have been digitized, nearly 3.5 million pages. The New York headquarters records through 1974, the first 60 years, have been digitized and are publicly available on our website. The more recent period of 75 to 89 is being completed. We expect that to be available by the end of this year or early next year. And again, the first 2 decades of Geneva have been completed. The last small section of that will go up on our public site by the end of this summer. The small overseas collections are also digitized, and you can find them on our site. More than 76,000 photos have also been digitized, and those are available too. Sorry about that. Records from the other collections are available as well, smaller numbers. And with the audiovisual materials, the records, the data is available, but the asset, the digital film or video is not available on the public site. You can request it, and we have processes via our website to do so. The oral history collection is not open to the public or available online. You have to request it, but there's a detailed finding aid on our site. You see the link there, and you can search through that to find topics of interest. Many of the oral histories are with staff or lay leaders talking about the work that they did in various parts of the world at various points in time, and so the oral histories are organized in that way. For today, we're going to focus on the names index, which has about 500,000 names with data in the records and the images of the documents available. This includes various types of materials, index cards, remittances, and lists. Generally, these lists were found in the text collections as cataloging work was done, and we saw that it would be useful to index the individual names for ease of search. These records in the index are focused on people who have been helped by JDC in some way. So general records, lists of survivors, and certainly basic birth and death records, marriage records, are not the kind of materials that you'll find in the index. And so we encourage you, before you begin to search, think about your family's story and whether they are likely to have been helped by JDC based on the time period, the location, and how they got where they are today. We can go right away and start a names search. Right on our site homepage, there is a section for our names index. It has a special API where there is a search box, and you can go right into searching. You can enter a surname or a given and surname, and just click enter and see what sort of results you get. Here I searched on the name Waxman. You can see from the box in green that there were 38 results. On the last page of those results here, I want to have noted in red that this search is a fuzzy search. It searches within one character of the name that you typed in. It can be one letter different or one letter plus or minus. In this case, we see that we have in these 4 results, 4 spellings or names: Waxman, Waxman with a double N, Wachtman, and Waxelman. Click on the name that's highlighted, you can see the record. I did it again. I will catch on to this. So here you see the results of the specific and individual record. The data fields are mostly below. by what document or set of documents the record is from, with a description of that list or set of index cards, and then you can see the link image. And this is what that image looks like. I want to point out here on the left in blue, these index cards, we get this question sometimes. People go to the cards and they say, it's not my family, it's the wrong result, it's the wrong link. These cards were digitized 2 per page, and your card may be the one on the bottom. The other card may not be related to the same family at all. I also wanted to point out in red that additional data fields may be available in the document itself. We may not have indexed that, but there is more information when looking at the document. Of course, we all want to see the document as part of our. After you've done a basic search, depending on the kinds of results you found, you encourage people to look at what we call a list of lists. This is a page on our website that shows the lists that have been included in the names index. It's chronologically organized. You see on the left, early remittance lists. That is where things started. JDC created a transmission bureau to help people get money to their relatives when normal banking channels were disrupted during World War I. And then later on the list, you see one of the major sections, lists from the Nazi period and immediately after. There's a great deal of material there. And as you saw, this page provides a description of each document, what sorts of data fields have been included, and a link to the PDF of the complete list. For index card sets, of course, we can't include so many pages, tens of thousands of index cards in many cases. Let's look at some sample lists. So I just mentioned the remittances. These are, here's a page from our remittances to Palestine in 1918. I have just this week shared this list with IGRA. It's one of a number of lists that we've shared. And I want to mention that when we share a list with IGRA or with other organizations, we share the data fields from the records with a link to our record. And if you follow that link, then you can get to the document. Don't share the image files, just the data, but you can do your name search and then come and see the document. On the left of these lists, you see the person sending the funds. In the middle, you see the amount, and on the right, you see the recipient. Other kinds of lists include wartime lists of refugees. This is from 1938, when Polish Jews were pushed out of Germany. They had been living and working there, and they were pushed across the border to the town of Spungen. We recently shared this list with JRI Poland. It will be up soon. And you see that this is a very detailed table. It gives the name, date of birth, place of birth, occupation, last town of residence in Germany, current address Spungen, and then the names and addresses of relatives overseas. That's a key point. Of course, people were trying to contact their relatives to let them know they were safe, to try to get assistance, possibly sponsorship to emigrate. After the Nazis invaded Poland, Jews fled farther east to Vilna, which was then under Soviet occupation. And this is a list of about 10,000 Jewish refugees in Vilna in 1940. This list was previously shared with JRI Poland. It's also, of course, on our site. And of course, the Vilna story is very well known. Some of the people on this list were able to obtain Sugihara visas, were able to get to Asia by other means, or fled overland to the Soviet Union, the Asian areas of the Soviet Union where they spent the war. And here we see some of those lists from Japan. In addition to individual refugees, groups from yeshivas went to Japan, including famously the entire population or community of the Mir Yeshiva. You see that this list is organized by yeshiva and then the individual names within each group. And we have photos of this activity as well. During the war, shipment of parcels was also very important. And again, this was mostly to those who were in Soviet Central Asia, and we were able to send parcels overland by truck from Tehran over the border into the Soviet Union. And this lists recipients with their full addresses. And you see a typical shot of the kind of parcels that we sent. These are matzahs for Passover from Manischewitz. Another photo of parcels this is immediately after the war. The shipment of parcels continued to various places in Europe, and we had a separate list of shipments to Poland. Again, this was organized out of our Jerusalem office, so the senders were residents in Palestine at that time, and we shared that list with IGRA as well. There are also passenger lists. Here we see one specific example. The Serpa Pinto took about a dozen trips during the war out of Lisbon going to the Western Hemisphere. And again, typical details. This is arranged alphabetically, but family groups are kept together. So you can see those groups. You can see what country they came from, the occupation, age, and we even have photos of this as well. And then there's also a section in the list of lists of ALIYAH to Palestine and Israel. People going from Europe, people going from North Africa, the Middle East. Here are two different lists that we have shared with IGRA. On the left, children to Palestine from France, and this is particularly interesting to me because it's from 1945. So the war was barely over, and this group of orphans was being organized to emigrate. On the right, we see a sort of semi-exception to our no birth records rule. This is a list of births to people who were detained in Cyprus by the British after trying to get into Palestine. And we know that there's been great recent interest in the Cyprus story, and many of you may have a family background that relates to those events. So these were memos sent from the British military hospital to the camp directors, copies to JDC, which was assisting in providing aid in the camps, giving the mother's name, the date of the birth, and the sex of the child. Of course, the children didn't have names yet, but we have the mother's names. And finally, we have our index cards, which is a large bulk of what has been indexed. Cards from the DP period immediately after the war, from JDC's Emigration Service offices in Munich and Vienna, separate collection of cards from our Warsaw office. These have all been indexed, and they cover not just the immediate post-war period, but all the way through the Hungarian uprising in the mid-50s. And I will note that we recently received cards from our Paris office, digital files from the ITS, the Arelson Archives, and we are working on those right now. The entire set of the Munich, Vienna, and Warsaw cards have been shared with MyHeritage, and the records, the data that is, and will be coming soon on that site. The Warsaw cards specifically have been shared with JRI Poland. Okay, let's go on to some searching. Here's an example of seeing the different types of documents we have and the range of times and places that they cover. We see that sometimes the results tell a story. Here is, we searched on someone named Itzhak Mendel-Gans. We see on the right 4 results, and they come from the Vilna refugees list of those receiving aid in Japan, and then those leaving Japan for other safe havens. And the documents look like this. On the left, you see the listing for Itzhak Mendel on the Vilna refugees list that I mentioned earlier. Then below, he's receiving aid in Japan. And then on the right, 2 entries where he is leaving Japan in 1941. It's a passenger list, and they're going from Kobe to Bombay and eventually on to Palestine. And now we can go directly to our online collections database rather than using the more limited names API. Before you begin a search, you may want to look, as shown on the left, at the Our Collections page of our site. You can there find out basic information about the different media and what each of those collections has: the photograph collection, the audiovisual collection, the text collection, etc., which may help guide you in thinking about your search. And the database has advanced search options, and of course you can view the images of the photos and document records. And we'll look at some more details. So the quick search, circled in red, searches across all the databases. So you may get text results, photo results, other things, but it is not so specific. Advanced search allows more targeted searching with fields that are more particular to the collection involved. And here we see in the upper left that to do an advanced search of the names database, you select names database, name search from that profile window. And the difference between this and the API is that the API allows you to search on names only. Here you can search on more specifics, locations, ship names. You can combine a name with a location, and it may get better results. In the lower right, I want to point out what these windows on the side refer to. We talked about fuzzy search earlier, and how that can help broaden your results. And the difference between literal and exact is that the literal search includes your search terms. So if you search on Schwartz, the literal search will give you results that include Schwarzer, Schwartzberg, Schwarzbrod, and other names that include the element Schwartz. Exact will give you exactly what you typed in. So for Schwartz, it will give you only Schwartz and not that as part of a larger name. And I wanted to point out that the fuzzy search option can be combined to give you even more different name variations. So the Boolean operators and, or, and not are available here. And you can, here on the left, we see searching a fuzzy search just on this spelling of Moskowitz. On the right, we see a fuzzy search with 2 different spellings, the second one being more of a Romanian form. And the results, you can see that you get more results searching in that way. And then you can also see here in the results on the right the various spellings of Moscovich that may come up. So in addition to that kind of searching, you may also just want to search several times, trying different spellings if you're not finding the family member who you are expecting to find. And I would also emphasize the location field in the name search. Again, this is something that's not available in the API, and it can help you to limit results, particularly if your surname is very common. The search engine will give you only up to 500 results. But if you get several hundred, you're not going to want to browse through them one by one. So if you do have location information, that can help you to get a more limited search result. Our locations may be given in a variety of spellings as well. Again, try different spellings that you may know. We do try to combine well-known spellings that differ historically and linguistically over time. So the examples here, Vilna, Wilno, Vilnius, whichever form you use, you will get the full set of results. The same thing with Lviv. What will be displayed as the data field result is only the principal form. So generally, for places like this, that is the current form, Vilnius or Lviv. And but then you may see on the card itself that a different spelling was used. I would also just note here that I make heavy use of Jewish Gens Communities database for figuring out historic variations and different spellings. Then we may move on to the text collection. So in the upper right, you would change from the name search profile to the text collection. You have in red the search all fields option. This is any of the data fields in the record. And at the bottom in green, there is separately subject terms. Search all fields would include subject terms, but the subject terms I want to point out, these are listed at the file level and higher only. That is file records, series, record groups, and they include place names, geographic terms, personal names, topical subjects, and organization or institution names. But the personal names, for those who are focused on name searching, would be those of the JDC staff who are corresponding, the names of the people in other organizations who they may be writing to or hearing from, other officials, not necessarily individual personal names that may appear in the run of text of a document or on some attached list. And before I wrap up this slide, I've just mentioned the gold box. Don't forget to have a look at our help features. The first one, the text search help, is an FAQ style text-based help page where there are questions and answers, and it provides a lot of details on how to do certain kinds of searching. And the video tutorial is about a 3.5-minute video that shows a live demo of the searching and how that all works. And finally, most important for the work that family researchers do is the full text search field. When we digitize the documents, they are scanned for optical character recognition, and that makes them fully searchable. You can search for names that appear within the text of the documents. They don't have to have been indexed. They don't have to have been put in a data field of the record. As an example, I did a full text search on the name Himmelstein, and I got 3 before we talk about the results, on the right-hand side of the page, the sort original, when you first get your results, there will be no sort order of any particular, it'll be random. If you have many results and you are focused on a particular date range, you may want to sort them by date so that you can skip past the ones that are prior to what you're looking at, and not go on to those that are after. If you have, pages and pages of results, you don't want to have to randomly look through one by one. If we look at the first result here, it is a Polish document from our Wartime Warsaw collection, and the name of the document means List of Refugees Living in Anapol. That sounds promising, so let's have a look. And here is what that list looks like. On the left, you simply get the PDF. You can see that it's 3 pages. And then you were searching for Himmelstein. Again, if it is many pages, you may not want to browse through page after page. You can use your browser's find feature. That's Control F, or I believe in Mac it is Command F. If you're looking at a 27-page document, you may not be able to find where Himmelstein appears, and this will take you to it. But here we find it on the second page of the document, and you see the result there. If we look at the second result from the Himmelstein search, we see the title on the lower left, Letter from Gitler-Barsky to the Canadian Jewish Congress in Montreal. And if we look at it, we may think, oh, it's just some document, some letter of some kind. What is the context? And then it turns out that it's very useful. It is people in Poland trying to connect with their overseas relatives. So on the left circled, you have the relative who is living in Toronto, Friedel Himmelstein, and on the right opposite is Chaim Dudek, who is trying to get in touch with her. If you are not finding the names of your family, or if your family left a region prior to 1914, but you know the town and you want to know more about the town, you can search for the town name. And here I wanted to show other fields of the text collection search that may be useful. You see on the bottom that you can limit your search to a date range. I limited this search to 1918 to 1923. I put the name of a town into the full text search, and I wanted to further limit it. So in search all fields, I said report. I don't want a lot of letters or memoranda in my results. I'm interested in a report, and I know that for this period, the interwar period, there are a great many field reports from towns in Poland, Ukraine, Russia, and so I'm looking to see if there's that type of report. We see on the right our search results, and in fact, we do have a report. And this is what that looks like. And the text I pulled out here notes that this is from 1923, and about half of the Jewish population is unemployed. There had been pogroms 3 or 4 years before, and even now the community has not recovered. So that gives you people wanting to know, why did my grandparents leave? What was going on? These reports give you a very clear picture of the circumstances, and they also will give a portrait of the Jewish community of that town: schools, synagogues, hospitals, community organizations, what sorts of occupations the people are involved in, what the overall financial status of the community is. And this all was with an eye toward what does the community need, and can JDC provide that sort of help? And I will, despite my technical confusion, I can wrap up with just a few minutes on some other features of our site. You can learn a lot, not just about your own the research that you're doing, but other historical periods and events, and see a lot of great content. So I would start with the photo galleries. Again, going from the Our Collections page, you see that boxed in yellow. You can choose a collection, photo, text, audio, visual. Here we choose the photo collection, and on that page about the collection, at the bottom of the page, you see boxed in red a link to the photo galleries. We have over 100 galleries available. Many of them are from the World War II era specifically, and they include galleries from some of the DP camps in Germany and Austria and Italy, children's homes in France and the Netherlands and Belgium, and other wonderful content. Here in the lower right, we see the gallery for the Vorenwald DP camp, one of the best known and largest camps, and you will initially see the album view displayed, and if you click on one of the images, it will take you to the slideshow view, which is where you will see captions. I, once again, did what I didn't intend to do. You can also see exhibits in the Our Stories section of the site. We have half a dozen very informative and detailed exhibits. They include not only photos, but documents and sometimes film clips, audio clips. These are curated, this is curated content that we've created. And I would again particularly point out our DP era exhibit, Everything Possible. It's organized in chapters and is very, very worthwhile. Also in the Our Stories section, we have, as you see on the left, we have some, again, selected content arranged in 3 areas: topics, locations, and not shown here, decades. So we have about a half a dozen topic and location sections. The topics, for example, include the main JDC mission areas of rescue, relief, and renewal. We do also happen to have a topic of genealogy and family history, so there's more that you can explore there. And again, there are locations, so if you're interested in a particular part of the world, you can see content specific to that. And within the decades section, we have a very nice history timeline where you can see the development of JDC's activities over the years. Also in the My Stories section, or the Our Stories section, are My Stories, are all our blog posts, and these have category tags. And those that have been tagged as My Story, you can search for those directly, following the link shown. And these are blogs that we have written or have been written for us, where people have found documents in our collections relevant to their family story, and have and we have written about how that document fits in and what their story and journey was, and what sort of assistance JDC provided. Other blog posts that are useful and that review some of the topics I covered today is our blog post on the list of lists, a blog post on fuzzy search, which will give more detail about how that works and more examples, resources of the Wartime Warsaw office, We saw the example of a list of refugees in Anapol. Half of that collection is a set of 500 alphabetically arranged folders that are town by town, and they have many, many lists in them. Lists of members of the Jewish community, lists of refugees, lists of people receiving aid. A lot of them are handwritten, and so we don't try to index them. Many of them, if it's just a list of community members, they may not have received any sort of JDC aid, so again wouldn't be included in the names index, but you can still find information about your family if they came from that part of Poland where JDC was still able to work in those early years of the war. And then we have resources on emigration to Israel. We talked about some of those lists, and there are more. And finally, the example that I gave of Itzhak Mendel Gantz, and you can see how that story was all put together with a variety of documents from different lists in our collections. And there are more of these at in the genealogy category, and the direct link is there. I thank you very much for bearing with me. I apologize again for my technical problems. We encourage you to look at our website, to sign up for our quarterly e-newsletter, and to follow us on social media. So, Gary, I hope that we have some time for some questions now. There's a question about whether the slides will be available. IGRA has been recording these webinars, as I understand it, and will post the recording. And Gary, I would be happy to send you the slides themselves if that would be useful. I know I covered an awful lot in a short time.
Are all the Nazi area name cards the same as what is in the Arlson database?
No.
You better repeat the question.
Yes, okay. The question is, are all the Nazi era index cards the same as are in the Arlson database? To my knowledge, to my understanding, the Arlson archives had our Paris office emigration cards, which is what they have recently shared with us, and we're in the middle of indexing. The other sets of cards that we have done ourselves from our Munich and Vienna offices and from our Warsaw office, I do not believe are held at the Arlson archives, although there is some overlap. The Paris cards were often duplicating a more of an end state period of activity as people passed through France on their way out to other countries, or were done as the Emigration Service headquarters office, which was in Paris, was trying to collate information that had originated in other offices.
There's another question of how you download documents and save them. You better repeat the questions.
Yes, the question is, how do you download documents and save them? Well, this is more of a, again, as far as I understand it, more of a basic computer operations question than something that is specific to how our database works. Once you have opened a PDF, you should be able to right-click to download, or again, some Mac equivalent of right-clicking, or save it as something else onto your desktop. I hesitate to start trying to play around with that now, but you can.
Okay. The next question is, how does the search engine allow for wildcard searching?
Great question. Something that I just didn't want to also throw into the mix. Yes, it does.
Repeat the question.
Okay, sorry, Gary. The question is, does the search engine allow for wildcard searching? It does, and for those who are familiar with wildcard searching, it works in the usual way. And for those who want more information, I'm pretty sure that that is covered in the text collection tutorials.
Okay, the next question is, how do the JDC Warsaw office 1939 to 1941 records in your collection relate to the JDC Warsaw and Krakow office records from that same period in the Jewish Historical Archives in Warsaw?
Okay, another good question. The question is, how do our wartime Warsaw records from 39 to 41 relate to the records that are in the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw? They are the same records. We had another successful collaboration. It was in the opposite direction from the kinds of sharing we've done with IGRA. In this case, the Jewish Historical Institute, as well with the participation of the USHMM, shared the digital files of those records with us, and we cataloged them for our purposes and put them into our system to make them publicly available online rather than available only on site in Warsaw.
Okay, there's another question. If there's any information on immigration to South America from Poland.
The question is there information on immigration to South America from Poland? Absolutely. I would suggest, if I can go back a few, I don't know if am I still screen sharing, Gary?
Yeah, I didn't take it from you.
Okay. If I can do this. Okay, so under these topics, explore by location, one of the locations is Latin America, and that's a great place to start. Also, we haven't indexed a few lists. If you look on the lists of lists, you'll find a couple of lists that are specific to Latin America. But mostly they are, information about people going to Latin and South America is as the destination field of, for example, sets of index cards, or we have a whole set of lists of departures from Europe, starting immediately after the war, from about 1947 to the early 50s. And a lot of those people were going to South America. So those have all been indexed, and you can search on a country. If you search by location in the names database, you can find records of people who went to those countries. But we don't have much in the way of records that are specific lists of people who went to specific countries.
Okay, are there records that are available from the Istanbul office?
Yes. Are there records available from the Istanbul office? That collection has been digitized and is available searching in the text collections.
Do you have the post-war JDC records that are also at the Jewish Historical Institute online?
This question relates to the previous question. This is about the post-war Warsaw office records of JDC. And once again, yes, these are the same records as are held, the paper is held at the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. They shared the digital files with us, and we put them online.
Wonderful. You're being asked here if there are opportunities for volunteers to assist with transcription or indexing.
Okay, a great question. Are there opportunities for volunteers to assist with transcription or indexing? I failed earlier to mention that all of this work is done by a wonderful team of volunteers. I had planned to mention this before I distracted myself with so many mistakes. And some have been with us for 10 years, a very, very dedicated and knowledgeable team. In general, our indexing work is done in-house. Occasionally, there are projects where, because of access to the database, we can't really give people remote access to the database. That's a complicated and difficult process, and our IT people also don't like it. But sometimes we have projects where we are inventorying a collection, for example, and not putting it into the database, and in that case there are some opportunities. We don't do much by way of transcription. Would be a different sort of project for us, but yes, I suppose there are possibilities there if we wanted to expand into that realm, but we have no plans to do so now.
One last question. There is someone who's asking if they are doing a lot of research, how would they know when updates have been made, and how would they find that updated information?
Okay, the question is, people are regularly using our site and doing a lot of research. How do you know when updates have been made or what has been updated? Generally speaking, certainly when it comes to the text collections, when we complete the work on a collection, particularly, and this may be after all of the digital records are available on the public site, a finding aid, an online finding aid will be published. And we will almost always announce, because the collections are very large, they take about 5 or 6 years to catalog and digitize. So we will almost always announce when a collection is newly available. When significant lists have been completed, that will usually be the subject of a blog post in our quarterly newsletter. And in recent years, the materials that we've indexed have all been very large blocks of documents. I think I managed to skip past one of our real biggies of recent years that again was of particular interest to all of you at IGRA, which was the lists of the Yemenite airlift, what we call on magic carpet, or you call on eagle's wings. That was 45,000 names, and you can be sure that we made a big hoopla about it when we finally finished it. But it is true that we have not, that we don't indicate when the date when a list has been added. And maybe going forward, I will figure out a way to indicate on the list of lists page something that is new and when it went up. But for the most part, it would be covered in our quarterly newsletter.
Okay, so you don't put up partial data sets, you put them up when they're completed?
Well, to be honest, in point of fact, we may not announce that a partial data set is up and available, but as indexing work is done, whenever we happen to do a periodic upload to the public site, that's usually about 4 times a year, whatever records from that set have been done by that point would become available. but depending on the way we work, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say, for example, that it is a solid alphabetical block from A through H. It may be bits and pieces as different volunteers work on different sections of a list, and so it's sort of difficult to announce these things while they're in process. Sort of the same with the text collections. They do go up as major sub-collections are completed, or generally whatever has been done in a 3 to 4 month period between uploads, but we don't make big announcements until the complete collection or sometimes a sub-collection is available. If people have particular inquiries and the relevant material is available but hasn't yet been announced, we will point people to that material.
Okay, the very last is, how do they get the quarterly newsletter? And then please thank everybody and wish them well.
Okay, you can sign up for our quarterly newsletter by going to our website. The website address right there, archives.jdc.org, and at the bottom of the page footer of the site, so that's on every page, there is a quick link to sign up for the newsletter.
Thank you very much. Can you say goodbye and good night to everybody? Wish them well.
Yes, I will. Thank you all. Again, thanks for bearing with me, and thanks for listening in. We were very excited about the high turnout, and I hope this has been informative, and we welcome your searching around in our database and on our site to see what you can find. Thanks again, and have a good afternoon or evening, depending on your location.